الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. صدق الله العظيم. O you who believe, we have prescribed for you a fasting, and to the people before you, so that you may learn God consciousness. First of all, I would like to start off with congratulating everyone for this month of Ramadan. And Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. And inshallah this month will be of immense benefit to us. And it will spiritually renew us and gain us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's our ultimate goal. So inshallah today in my khutbah, I will be talking about the spiritual path of Islam and the inner dimensions of Islam. And this is the perfect setting for it, because Ramadan is the month for us to spiritually cleanse ourselves. It's one month in the whole year that Allah gives us to refresh our hearts, our minds, our bodies, and to just get closer to Him. So talking about this in the month of Ramadan, this ihsan, the inner part of Islam, is immense importance to us, and we have to make sure that we not only listen, but we also try to take it to heart. Don't let it go through one ear and out the next. We want to keep it, let it stay in the heart, and let it settle there, inshallah. So, first of all, I would like to talk about what ihsan, or spirituality in Islam, is about. Because a lot of us tend to forget it, especially throughout the year when all we do is ritual worships like prayer, and we don't feel anything of it. So, everyone should know the famous hadith Jibreel, where Jibreel came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he sat down with him, and he was in the shape of a man, and all the Sahaba, they were confused, and because this man came in all white clothing, and no one knew of him, so he was a stranger. But usually in those times when a stranger would come and sit down with you, he would be covered in dirt, or with dust, because he's been traveling. But this person came in all white clothing, in really nice clothing, and he came down with the Prophet ﷺ, and the Sahaba were all confused. Who is this man? And he came and he questioned the Prophet ﷺ, and this confused them even more. But he asked, what is Islam? What is Iman? What is Ihsan? So inshallah we'll talk about the third part. He asked the Prophet ﷺ, what is Ihsan? And he said, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if you see Him, and if not, that He sees you. So that is basically, it's almost like 1/3 of our deen. We have 3 parts of our deen: Islam, Iman, Ihsan, established by this hadith. But this is the really hard part for our deen, because we have the Islam part. We do the Jum'ah, we do the Salah, we do the fasting, the Zakat, the Hajj. But there's no inner part to this worship. There's no life to this worship. So that's why we really have to focus on the ihsan, especially in this month, because this is the month where the ihsan can prosper. And you know that because Allah prescribed, in the ayah that we mentioned earlier in Surah Al-Baqarah, He prescribed fasting for us. And that's the most ihsanic way of getting close to Allah. So if you look at the ayah, He says Khutba. Basically, Allah, it's one translation, He's prescribing for you the fasting. So think about it, the prescriptions, whenever you're sick, or you have an illness or disease, the doctor prescribes a healing for you, some medicine of some sorts, and it cures your illnesses, and you feel better afterwards. So Allah, in the same way, He's prescribing a cure to our spiritual illnesses. So throughout the whole year, we get lost. We get lost in the dunya. It's a very deceiving world. And we lose ourselves. We lose our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we don't even know anything about ourselves, subhanAllah. So Allah gives us this prescription to lift us out of this darkness and to get closer to Him. So we have to realize what these spiritual diseases are and what these cures can be. So, if we're looking at ihsan and spirituality, we have to realize there's two main forces inside of us, and they're in constant battle throughout our whole lives, and it'll never end. It's supposed to be like that. Allah made us like that. Some people say, oh, this nafs, the inner desires, Allah put those in us. They're supposed to be there, but our job is to control them, to tighten a rope around them, just control them and use them for our benefit. So we have these desires. We were pulled towards, the shahawat. We want to, eat and drink all the time. The sexual desires, all these things, just vain talk, all these things we just want to do because it's inside of us. But then we have this other force that's pulling on us, and it's like the angelic attributes, the attributes of worshiping Allah and being close to Him, and the pure attributes. So they're always constantly battling, and we really fall into ghafla in our lives, especially outside of Ramadan. And instead of becoming Abdullah, we become Abdul Nafs. And all we do is we basically worship our nafs. We listen to it way more than we listen to Allah. And it's a serious problem, and it's a spiritual disease. And subhanAllah, Allah He made us in such beautiful ways. Fi ahsani taqweem. We are a beautiful creation, and there's so much potential in us. We just don't realize. The great poet Rumi, when he says, we are born with wings. So why do we prefer to crawl through life? And there's a spiritual meaning to this. Not literally we're born with wings, but we have this potential to reach the skies. And when I say reach the skies, to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be in His presence, like in the hadith that states, to worship Him as if you see Him. Wherever you go, you're with Him. Allah, you're with Allah. And that's what we have. We have the potential. It's inside of us. We all have this fitrah. But we just lose this connection, and we lose this touch, and we give into our inner desires. And subhanAllah, Allah gives us the month of Ramadan and these different worships to pick us up out of these things. So inshallah, we should understand that this is a very important spiritual path, and it's important for us to start embarking on it. So if you think about fasting, subhanAllah, fasting is so beautiful. And it's really an ihsanic worship because it's like a secret worship. So you have the prayers, you go in front of people, you pray, people can see you. Somebody some showing off might come into your heart, or some other thing. You give zakat, it's seen. You do hajj, of course it's seen. All of these different acts, they're worship that everyone can see. But fasting it's a secret worship, just between you and Allah. No one can even tell you're fasting. So it's a very intimate and very beautiful kind of worship. And in the Hadith Qudsi, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُلُّهُ عَمَلِ ابْنِ آدَمَ كُلُّهُ عَمَلِ ابْنِ آدَمَ لَهُ إِلَّا الصِّيَامِ. So every act that the son of Adam does is for himself. إِلَّا الصِّيَامِ, except for the fasting. And then beautifully he says, فَإِنَّهُ لِي. إِنَّهُ لِي. He's saying, it is mine. It's mine. Fasting is Allah's. وَأَنَا أَجْزِي بِهِ, and He will reward it. All these other acts we do are for us, but fasting is His. It's so beautiful, the love Allah has for us. It's His. He'll take care of it. On the Day of Judgment, people can take your good deeds, and if you did wrong to someone, they might take something, but no one can take fasting from you. It's Allah's. You can't take anything from Allah. And you see how beautiful this is, though. He says, فَأَنَّهُ لِي, فَأَنَّهُ لِي. It's mine, and it's close to Him. Allah loves it so much. So we have to realize that when we're fasting. Take a minute or two, sit down and reflect and say, am I getting closer to Allah with this? Am I really doing this for Allah? And the beautiful part of ihsan, you're sitting there in your living room or anything, and in the kitchen you have the food right there, and you have all these things, but you don't touch it. No one is around you. No one can see you. But you don't even go close to it. You don't even think about touching it. That's ihsan. The second part of that hadith, Allah is watching you when you worship. That's ihsan. So if we keep working on that, inshallah we can apply the first part, where we worship and we witness Allah.